So today, the goal is to get your typography ready and exported and ready to submit. So the app that you're going to use is an online app. It's called Icomoon App. You can click the link that I've included in week 9 content, and you can kind of ignore all of this other all the other icons that they have here for right now, because we're actually going to be building our own based off of the font that you've created in Illustrator. Now, just as a word of caution as we move forward, this is a free online program. No one's paying for this. Anyone can use it, and so there may be a couple of quirky glitches or issues that come up, or issues that you have. If you get to a point where you feel like you've tried everything and something's not working, send me an email, let me know, and you know, I'm not going to make you spend hours trying to figure something out if it's not quite clicking, because this is not an Adobe product, etc. This is a way for you to hopefully easily turn your creation into an actual working, usable font. But I won't hold it against you if something happens and things just simply aren't syncing up. So if I come over to my Illustrator document here, hopefully many of you guys are at the point where you've created your letters in either lowercase or uppercase, and you're ready for the next steps in the process of getting ready to export and turn them into an actual usable font. What I would recommend you doing before you take that next leap is just do a final double check. Make sure, you know, draw a big square over everything. Make sure there's no extraneous paths hanging out. Make sure you've converted all of your strokes into simple paths, or you know, so that you don't have any of those outlines around anything. And we talked about how to do that in our last demo. And then you want to make sure that everything is pure black and you don't have any white spaces hanging out or any color spaces that aren't pure black. And again, in order to double check for this, obviously I can draw, you know, a big square or rectangle that's a certain color, and then I can try, let's go ahead and put that, if I send it to back, so I know that it's going to be behind everything. I can just double check that by, you know, dragging over, option click, holding. Cool. So I can see that everything is see-through. I don't have any white spaces. Things are as simplified as possible. So that's what I'm looking for. I also want to make sure, you know, my font is a pretty good size. You know, if I try to upload something that's super tiny, like if you've drawn your font at like this scale or something and you just realize that and you're like, oh no, definitely expand your font within your baseline grid so that you know that that font is large enough to pull into this next part of the process. So once you've double checked all of those aspects with your font, which you've probably been doing as you've been creating it, which is great, you're going to get ready to export. So I have my guidelines off. Obviously, I have my baseline off. And what I'm going to do for each letter is go up to File, Export, Export As. And for these guys, I'm going to create a new folder within, you know, whatever folder you're working in. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it SVG. And SVG stands for Standard Vector Graphic. So for our export, we're actually going to be exporting very simple vectors. So I've created an SVG folder, and I've actually already exported each of my letters. But I'm going to go through here and show you. I want to make sure that since I'm exporting my A, I call it a.svg. This is important because you want to be able to find what that letter is by file name as we're assigning the graphic to a letter on your actual keyboard, if that makes sense. The other thing I want to do is click Use Artboards, especially if you have two artboards hanging out because you've been crafting your full alphabet on your other artboard. I'm only going to select a range of 1. I only want artboard 1 to go out in this export. I don't want both artboards, otherwise I'm going to have double the amount of artboards that I actually need. I'm going to hit export. Decimal 2 is great. Format SVG. Internal CSS is fine. All of that is good. I'm going to hit OK. And because I've already exported all of my letters so that you wouldn't have to sit here and watch while I do that, it's saying that the file already exists. So I can hit cancel because I know I've already exported those. But what you want to do is go through with your eyeballs and you're going to double check the letters if you haven't already, and you're going to export each of them individually as a single SVG file. When you see these populate in your SVG folder, I'm going to come over there to typography demo. You should ultimately end up with all of these different SVG files, and they're all going to say -01-01 because that's referring to your artboard. So you want to make sure you have exactly 26 of those, unless you did both uppercase and lowercase letters, which would be pretty ambitious. So you're going to be looking at all of those and making sure that they're in a good spot. You haven't forgotten any letters. It looks good to me, so I'm ready to move on to the next step. So that export is done. I have my Icomoon app pulled up, and the first thing I'm going to try to do is click over here to where it says Untitled Project, because I'm going to start a new project for my typography so that hypothetically when I export that font, it has the name of my font attached to it. So I'm going to say new project, and I'm going to call this Monster Mash because that's the name of my font. Cool. And then I'm going to click load. And so up here at the top, it should say Monster Mash is my project. And I can come up to the purple button that says Import Icons. So I'm going to click that. And it's going to allow me to add my own icons to my library. So I'm going to go over to my typography, my SVGs, and here is where I'm going to make sure that I hit Command A or Control A to make sure all of my letters have been selected here, and then I'll hit open. So that untitled set is going to populate right up there, and I should see all 26 letters of the alphabet in my untitled set here. If I go into properties, I can change my URL, I can change my title, potentially. Oops. Properties. See if we can. I can edit the metadata for this. I can call it. Oops. We'll try that one more time. Nope. So again, this is a glitchy part of that. Maybe it'll work on your machine. I am running a kind of old Mac computer, so it's worth experimenting with properties so that you can add the properties, the license, all of that good stuff to your set. But in the meantime, I am just going to make sure that I click on each of these letters so they're kind of selected and highlighted out and ready to go on to the next step. You'll notice up here in the Icomoon app, you have both a selection tool, you have a trash tool if you need to remove something and replace it. You have a move tool if you want to move something around, and you also have an edit tool. If I click the edit tool, not that you have to do this if everything's coming up, but if something has, a warning sign or it doesn't look like it's working and you want to take a look, I can use my edit tool to click on any given letter and take a look at that. It looks like everything is doing pretty well. I can scale it, I can move it, I can rotate it if I want to. This should also, if you accidentally did export your font, it might have a warning that says multicolor glyph, which would be an immediate flag that you need to go back, change that letter, and re-export it for this part of the process. So everything looks good to me. but just so you're aware, there's both the edit tool as well as the selection tool. So I'm ready to generate my font. So I'm going to click on this tab down here. And this is the part where you're going to see all my glyphs come up. And I need to actually assign them to an actual letter on my keyboard. So this is the part where I'm going to find this little square. It's over here. It doesn't look like very much. It looks like a little glitch, but sometimes students don't see it because it is so small. I'm just going to map that to the lowercase letter A. I'm going to map this one to the lowercase letter B, map this one to the lowercase letter C, and so on. D, E. You're going to notice also that G. If you made your font in all uppercase, the lowercase letters are not going to sync up. If you map them to uppercase letters, and then vice versa. I am very bad at multitasking, trying to focus and then also tell you guys things. P, Q. Now if you notice that one of these does not work, again, that's a sign that you might want to go over to that Edit tab and see what's wrong with that letter. And you might need to go back and re-export that letter, or in some cases, if it doesn't work constantly, you might have to redesign it and just make sure you don't have any of those extraneous paths hanging out on that letter. You want to simplify as much as you possibly can. Great. So now I have all of my letters in the monster font all mapped to a letter on my keyboard. And simple enough, I can go to font where it says download. And it's going to call it icomoon.zip in that downloaded zip folder. So I'm going to go into my downloads folder, or I'm going to hit show in Finder so I can actually get to this guy. And I'm going to find that zip file and double click it. So it should pop up with, yep, cool. It unzipped that folder. I'm going to go into where it says fonts, double click that, and you're going to notice it's exported 4 different types of font things. Between both a SVG file, a WOFF, but the one that I need to install into my machine is the .ttf. That's the actual font. So I'm going to double click on that guy. And my font book is going to pop up on my Mac if I'm using a PC. It should also prompt you to install the font. When you click on that, I can see all of my letters laid out right here, and I'm going to click on Install Font. And it's going to call it Icomoon. I'm still trying to figure out, I think it's something in properties that's not allowing me to make sure that the font is actually called what I want it to be. So bear with me on that. Again, it's a free program. It's not perfect. But now, that font should be installed into all of my fonts on my computer. So I'm going to, cool. Try, essentially typing with that new font. Maybe it will pop up. We're running just a little bit slow here. This is maybe more trouble than it's worth. Just going to create a little untitled document. All good. I'm going to grab my text tool. And I'll say Monster Mash font. Let's make that a bit bigger. I can do that with that font cue, or I could have just expanded it. And then under character, I'm going to go to Icomoon. Boom. monster mash font. And then I can come down over here and just type out my alphabet so that that can be submitted as well. Maybe I'll make this whole thing a little bit bigger. So I'm going to both submit my Illustrator file as well as a file that has, you can include the title, but at least include your alphabet laid out just as a JPEG. If you are unhappy with the spacing, and this is one thing I have noticed about the Icomoon app, it does tend to add a bit more spacing than what you maybe want between the letters themselves. You can come over here to your character and actually adjust some of the kerning and some of the spacing between the letters. So if I kind of want to compress this, I can do that in my character window with this spacing tab, and then I can set my kerning to be a little bit less as well, hypothetically. Auto or 0 on extended selections. Okay, so it wants me to use the tracking option. Cool. So if I want to pull my letters closer together, I can do that through tracking. Great. And now, if I zoom in, I can see all of my little monster letters placed out nicely, ready to go. So once I'm ready with this one, I can go to File. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Nice. File, export as. I'll export it as a JPEG. The great thing about this is you can now use this font that you've created in anything else that you want to. So you can call it last name, first name, typography. You can call it by its name if you want. And you're going to export that as a JPEG, and then you'll also submit your Illustrator file for this project so that I can see your work through the process. I'll say, yep, all good. So now I have a JPEG of this that I can submit. So that is how you go about exporting your typography, working with the Icomoon app. Inevitably, some of you guys are going to have some issues in this part of the situation, like something's not going to take or a letter's not going to come through. As always, if you're getting frustrated or something's not quite working, send me a screenshot of your letter in Illustrator, send me a screenshot of what's happening here, and I'd love to give you some guidance that will hopefully make your lives a little bit easier. But again, if you're trying and trying and trying, and you feel like you've spent a little bit too much time trying to wrestle with the Icomoon app and it's just not taking your font, which would be so sad, let me know. And the app itself does have some glitches and some problems, not always, but sometimes. So something to keep in mind. So anyway, thanks everyone. Look forward to seeing your work. Thanks so much.